Hey, welcome to Spencer Keck's Hillbilly Think Tank. Now, last night I had my first introduction to you on Compton's Corner, where William Compton and I talked about why we are running for office. And tonight I wanted to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which we brought up yesterday, and that is hungry children. You know, as a child who spent some time truly hungry in my lifetime, I don't want to see any kids go through that. Yet it seems like right now we have some folks in this country who think that if kids are hungry, that's either their fault or their parents' fault. Well, regardless of who you want to blame, I still don't think anyone needs to go hungry in this land of plenty. And it's abhorrent to me that we think some kids should go hungry or even some adults. I don't think any adults need to go hungry. But let's talk about the kids first tonight. So, the kids that I know in my classroom that are going hungry are ones that are also having trouble studying. And who can study when you've got an empty stomach? And who wants to think about anything else when you're thinking about how hungry you are and wondering when your next meal is going to be entering your body? So, I remember when I was a kid, I started off with a mom and dad. They were married, got divorced, and it's too early for me to even know that they were ever divorced or that they were married. I just knew I had a mom and dad. After the divorce, I would see my dad occasionally. He was a Vietnam vet. He was going through a lot of stuff. I now know as a veteran myself that had probably had to do with PTSD. They just never got diagnosed. Um, he was a survivor of the Ia Drang in Vietnam. If anyone's ever seen We Were Soldiers Once and Young, he was in that battle. He was in the helo that picked up the few survivors from the lost platoon. He went through a lot of other stuff in Vietnam that I, barely got to hear about from him because he just wouldn't talk about it. I understand, but I believe that had, of course, something to do with my parents' divorce. It was the 70s, and yeah, didn't really have much to talk about because I grew up in the very beginning of my childhood with my mom's parents, Dr. Alex Spencer and Charlene Spencer, and they were just a wonderful, amazing people. So it really wasn't an issue for me until I saw that it bothered my mom. But those, my real point is, for the beginning few years, from ages birth to about 3, I didn't have any worries about where my next meal was coming from. I always had something to eat. I always had the best things to eat, freshest things to eat, as the grandson of a doctor. Um, but once my mom decided she was going to leave Kentucky for a bit, go live with a childhood friend of hers who was also a divorcee, and that divorcee had some kids and was looking for a roommate down in Austin, Texas. Went down there, and then I got to understand um, what it was like to not have the grandparents to provide things anymore. Mom was a social worker at this point, and actually, I assume that's what she was doing down there. Her training was in education and social work, but um, yeah, even though we had meals, it wasn't quite the same. And now we were living at some point even on food stamps. Um, Later, when she met the guy who would later on in my life become out my stepdad, that's when child abuse started. And the child abuse also was coupled with many periods of hunger. And recall, as I shared last night, when I would have been in 6th grade, we had moved all over many times before this, but we had landed in Montana, and Stepdad had just decided to leave us and go on down to Texas to gallivant around for about 6 months. Um, Mom, at this point, was not allowed to work outside the home because women are supposed to stay home, be submissive. And so being submissive meant her kids were starving. Um, Stepdad sent up some other single mom with a couple kids to stay with us in the trailer we were living in this trailer park outside of Bozeman, Montana. And we were so low on food that we were going behind Safeway. And like I say, I would have been in the sixth grade. My brother would have been fourth grade. He was not embarrassed as mom sent him inside the dumpster. I tried to stand off and just watch them doing their, dumpster diving, as I later learned it was, is called. And we found lots of food that was just a little bit away from being fully fresh for Safeway standards. That gave us some fresh vegetables to eat, gave us some bread to eat, fruit roll ups. I remember being in there. Oh my gosh. So we never had things like that. And here we got it out of the dumpster. Highly embarrassing, but hey, I got to eat. But if I back up just a few years to third grade, we moved from Frankfort, Kentucky. We've gone back and forth, Kentucky and Texas. We've gone from Frankfort, Kentucky. My stepdad had gotten a job working in the state government because my grandfather called in some political favors he had and got him a job since his stepdad was often unemployed due to being incorrigible and unable to work for people, even though he had a college education and was had a degree as an architect. But anyway, we bounced around Frankfort. I remember living in a trailer outside the city limits. Then we had a house that we're living in. Um, my grandfather was paying for us, and stepdad was remodeling this place that had been flooded by the big flood there in the late 70s, early 80s. And while my we lived there, we then moved from Frankfort when the new governor came in and stepdad lost his job. We moved down to Arkansas, and I remember while my mom was pregnant with my sister, there were nights the only thing we had for supper was oatmeal, and that's oatmeal without any milk to give it some flavor. Just had to put some water on it to make it a little more palatable, more than it had been cooked with. I remember we had some goats, milk goats, and so I was able to finally get some milk by milking those goats myself, learn how to do that. But then there were times when there wasn't any food in the house, but there was goat food, goat feed out in the shed. So my brother and I were tasting what goat food tasted like. Luckily had some molasses in it, whatever green stuff we were eating didn't hurt us, didn't kill us, but oh boy, that wasn't a meal. And we were, at that point, we were still going to public school there in a little teeny tiny town in the Ozarks. And I was going to school hungry, but thanks goodness, even though we couldn't afford to buy the meals there at the school, thank goodness some of the teachers would have pity on me and make sure I got something to eat at school there. And this was, I've now understand since I am a teacher, that came out of their pocket. Those days when mom didn't have any sandwiches to send us, uh, yeah, I would get those meals because teachers would pay for it. My gosh, Hillbilly, Ozark teachers, they weren't getting paid much, but by gosh, they really did take care of me. I wish I could go back and thank them. I think the next time I get down to the Ozarks, I will try and look them up if they're still, alive and kicking. That would have been, again, that was in the 70s. Anywho, that stuck with me, still sticks with me. So when I see hungry kids, I am so happy that right now, where I teach in Jefferson County, the kids are still getting some free meals. But I understand that the federal government wants to cut that off. And that's just breaks my heart because no kid should have to come to my class starving. Luckily, I've got a friend who works for a local um, spot where they make bread here in Hardin County, and he hooks me up when he can with boxes of Takis because these are the favorite things for the kids to eat. And boy, there's nothing motivates them more to do their work than, oh, I get some Takis. So, whatever it takes to keep kids engaged, keep them learning, and by gosh, make sure they're not starving. That's the biggest thing, people. Let's care for one another. I mean, that's the biggest thing I got out of my Bible when I was a kid. I read the King James back then. Being good to one another was biggest commandment. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Treat the strangers in your midst the way that you'd want to be treated yourself. Treat them with dignity. Treat them with love. That was Jesus's message. Wow, are we forgetting what we read, or did we skip that part? Anyway, let's all love one another, just like I see it, and in my community. Let's share that. Let's have this powerful, loving community. Again, guys, I am running for magistrate in District 3 here in Hardin County. Please consider voting for me, and I'll tell you more stories. You share yours with me. Have a great night.